Hi everybody. Let's take a few minutes to talk about the pains of composition. That is, let's talk about what happens when you take a lone writer who's used to doing all of their content creation by themselves and you put them in a collaborative environment. There's some really great things that can come from it, but also there are some challenges that we need to be honest about. So let's explore those. I'm Matt. I'm a customer advocate at K15T. Not really a fan of titles, but essentially I am a documentarian. I've been a tech writer for a while now, and that's actually how I met the K15T team. I was using their apps that turn Confluence into a tech writing tool, and one thing led to another, and I said, hey, I want to be the advocate for your users. So that's what I get to do. It's a really, really cool job. But one of the things I really love about Confluence and other tools like Google Docs or Word Online or Apple's Pages, when collaboration isn't totally broken, is you can just jump in and work together and create content together in a way that you just couldn't do in older solutions. Collaboration, I believe, is ultimately better, and I love it. But it comes with some challenges. So here's what I mean. Jump on a time machine and go back with me to the days when Matt was a lone tech writer. Yes, I was working with a database solution that was just on my local machine, and then I would commit my changes to a repository separate from all the other code that my team was looking at. So essentially, I was the lone writer. It was just me, and it's had some great benefits. So for example, it was just my thoughts. There were very few contradictions because I was the only one putting into the documentation, so it made it very easy to agree upon what should be in there. Also, I could write and rewrite and revise as much as I wanted and either send it straight to publishing, let's pretend we haven't done that before, or maybe I get a little bit of feedback near the end when it's complete. I'm also, I'm very passionate about the work I'm doing because I believe in documentation and what it does for users. I don't have to know specifically what the rest of my team feels. And also, I know every change that happens to the docs. I have full control over those and the entire creative process. Well, then my team switched to Confluence, a collaborative writing tool. And it was great because teammates can now quickly contribute to my work, right? All of a sudden, I'm getting reviews much faster, which is actually the reason we switched, because it was so difficult for people to give their feedback. My subject matter experts could really quickly jump into the collaborative editor to contribute comments or content, or they could leave comments right there and get out and go on with their lives. And because the tool is cloud-based and we all had licenses, there were no restrictions. Like there was no one who could say like, oh, I can't give you feedback because I don't have access to the tool. Everybody had access to it, which is just like amazing, so great. But also came along all these other changes that I didn't really expect. So all of a sudden that personal writing box that I had been living in was lifted, and I'm now creating content with a whole bunch of people. I'm no longer the lone tech writer. Everybody has an opinion, and I get to see how valuable the people on my team really think documentation is. And then the craziest thing, people can see me writing. Not only can they literally see me writing because we're working in a collaborative editor and we can see the words come onto the screen, but also they can see the writing process. They can see when I'm producing a lot of content or where I'm really struggling with just a little bit. It's very transparent and a little bit scary. So as with the solitary creation process, collaboration is much more of an art than it is a process or a collection of tools. It involves a lot of soft skills and understanding how to work with people. So because it's such an art form, why not compare it to a piece of art? And this is my favorite piece of art of all time. It's called The Passion of Creation, or The Pains of Composition. It's by Leonid Pasternak. I hope I'm not butchering his name. I just adore this. Look at his inkwell. Look at how much ink he has used in whatever it is he's creating, or the number of resources around him that he's pulling in and adding to this content to make it really valuable. Look at how dark the room is. How long has he been doing this? Or the loose papers everywhere. How many revisions has he worked on? How bad is that headache? Looks pretty rough. And not that I recommend this, but look at how many cigarettes he smoked to produce what it is he's working on here, right? creation is a difficult process sometimes. It takes everything we have sometimes. And collaboration just takes that creative process and amplifies the highs and the lows. So if I could take this painting and sort of flip the perspective into sort of modern creation process, I think it'd look something like this. Ah, yes, we're all very familiar with this, sitting at our desk at home, writing. But now it's not just us. It's us and everyone else. We're all working together and we all share these collaborative spaces. So let's look at what it takes to collaborate really, really well and make our best content of our lives. So first, we're going to talk about personalities and writing alongside a complicated spectrum of people. Then we'll talk about how we build healthy feedback loops and how to identify unhealthy feedback. Then we'll talk about developing a shared motivation, not just within yourself, but across your team and within your organization. And then we'll talk about how we can thrive in transparency rather than hiding in transparency. So the first thing that's new about creating content collaboratively is that people have different personalities. It's not just my personality that's coming through, it's now everybody's. And this can be challenging because we're used to being alone. People don't do things the same way, I found out. We are all very different, and that can be amazing for our final content because it incorporates the perspective of a wide variety of people. But it might be the part of the process where you're thinking, I miss being the lone writer when it was just me and my thoughts. So if you're feeling that way, let's look at how we work with a spectrum of personalities. So the first thing to know is there's sort of two ways that people like to focus on things. There's people who are prevention focused and people who are promotion focused. A great example of this in true life is in 1998, NASA sent the Mars Climate Orbiter to Mars to orbit the planet and collect data, send it back. It was going to be incredible. They spent $125 million in taxpayer money and 10 months to get it there. And it just burned up in Mars' atmosphere. And upon review, it was found that there was a unit conversion issue between metric and English units. And it just entered the atmosphere wrong and just poof. And that was a huge issue. And it was because many people were promotion focused on the team. Big thinkers who like to work quickly, and they see a risky thing as a chance for success and an opportunity for success, right? And they assume everything's going to go according to plan. Nothing can go wrong. We're going to do this. And these are the people that are often very lauded within our organizations because when you take big risks and you are successful, the success is great. What they really needed was a bit more focus on prevention-focused individuals, people who are the detail thinkers, who tend to work more slowly and plan for the worst. Often, to be honest, people don't care if these folks succeed. If someone said, oh, we made a unit conversion mistake here, somebody would be like, okay, whatever, change the value and let's move on. But imagine if they had a good balance of those two focuses in their documentation. We would have probably known a lot more about Mars. So don't assume that a promotion-focused person is the manager on the team. Like in this example, the engineers were the promotion-focused individuals. They were like, we're in space, we're exploring space. They totally missed this small and extremely important detail. So any one of us can be promotion-focused or prevention-focused. So here are some tips for working with both types of people and both types of focuses. First, there is no one kind that is better. That includes the kind of focus you have. You really need to incorporate both to have the most complete set of documentation. When you are collaborating with these people, keep in mind promotion-focused people, they like inspirational stories, grandeur, that kind of thing. Prevention-focused people like cautionary tales. What could go wrong? And you should incorporate both types of content into your documentation to round it out beautifully. The next thing to remember is there's an introversion-extroversion scale. And you are not just an introvert or an extrovert. That scale moves throughout our day, throughout our week. Our personalities change. Extroversion is the gravitation toward getting personal energy from the outside world, from people or stuff, whereas introversion is getting energy from within yourself, within your thoughts and your ideas. Extroversion is often when you're feeling outgoing or dynamic. You feel very comfortable working in groups, and you're jumping too quickly into things sometimes without plans. Introversion is when maybe you're more reflective and comfortable being alone. And sometimes maybe you spend too much time alone, too much time in your thoughts, and your ideas aren't really in line with reality. So some things to know about this. When working with people, we all are shifting between introversion and extroversion throughout our day, throughout our week. That's really, really important. Also, it doesn't have to do with the fact that you're shy or you're bold, right? This is just the way our personalities work. And you might get a little bit of feedback from someone, or you might get a lot of feedback from someone based on where they are in that scale. So it's important to know how do your teammates generally tend to be on the introversion scale. And a great way to do this is to find a well-known personality test. Myers-Briggs is really popular, DISC. There's several out there. Most of the time your company will pay for these, but it's really valuable to know, how do your coworkers tend to think? Where do they tend to be with their personalities? Because you're going to get very different types of feedback depending on where they are in this scale. And then the last thing to know is we are leaders within our team. When we collaborate, it's not the manager's responsibility to make sure everyone is moving in the right direction. You are a documentarian. You're a trained professional. You have tons of skills. You need to help guide the rest of the team who might not be as experienced in best practices and great processes and that kind of thing. So what I love to look at is this graphic. It's called the leadership tree. And, the top part of the tree are the things we always expect from leaders, right? They communicate well, they drive our culture, they set our vision. We often think of managers as doing these kinds of things or leadership within the company. But that's not really the way it works. There's this root thing that comes with real leaders, and all of us need to grow these parts of ourselves because the rest just comes. For example, we need to be inwardly sound. That's the really important component there is self-awareness. We need to be aware of who we are, what we're good at, where our skills are, and then also maybe where we're weak, where the working style we don't have, so that we can look at confidently, what are the rest of our team like, our collaborators? How do they like to work? How do they like to give feedback, etc.? We have to be confident in ourselves in order to be able to look at the people we're collaborating with and understand how to best work with them. Another thing in that others-focused area is we need to be curious. We need to be able to ask questions that lead people to think better, think differently, and also to draw out information from our collaborators that wouldn't otherwise happen. And then finally, again, within that others-focused area is we need to be humble. We need to know that, yes, we are the trained professionals, but also I might not be the best writer for this particular situation, or I might not have the best example. This other person might. So knowing our team and being able to say, you are better at this than I am. Would you please contribute here? Would you please give me feedback? That humility will get you a long way. So now we're working with different types of people. We know how to do that. Great. But we're also getting different types of feedback. And not all types of feedback are useful. In fact, some are really detrimental. This is the part of the collaboration experience where you may feel like, why does everyone have an opinion? I liked it when it was just my opinion. Here's how we build healthy feedback loops. So first off, we have to open the dialogue. Healthy feedback doesn't just happen, and your manager, your leader, whomever, doesn't make that happen. You make that happen. And this is done by being open and honest, and it starts with a dialogue from you. You have to confront the team and say, I need your feedback, or I need your contribution. Here is what I need. Here's what you can help me do. Or here's what I would like to provide you in way of feedback. You can't demand it, but you can express it. And we'll talk in a minute. You can model it to let the team know, here's how we really need to work together. And then once you have that feedback moving, it's important to know there are different types out there. As we collaborate on content together, feedback will increase. It should, especially in tools where you like Confluence, where you can both jump into an editor and be adding stuff. You can add comments. Feedback is very easy, and that can lead to bad feedback. And when people only incorporate about 30% of the feedback they're given, we really need to make sure it's the best feedback we can give. So the first kind is positive feedback, which is just like, this sentence is great, or keep up the good work. This is great for morale boost, and it very much needed, but also does not help the person you're giving feedback to at all. It just tells them, you did a great job. Doesn't tell them, you could improve, or here's what you could do better next time. It's just literally, good job. Keep those in mind, but not the best kind of feedback. The one that you really want to avoid is negative or destructive feedback. And this is often what people go to, especially if they see somebody doing something where it's like, you just need to stop doing this. So this type of feedback sounds something like, I can't understand what you've written here. Or your content review was useless to me. This is unhelpful in many ways. First of all, it just totally trashes the person that you're talking to. It generally can be, straight up hurtful, but also it doesn't give a direction of what was the issue. What are the questions you have? What was unclear to you? It just tells them you're bad rather than you could be better. So really the ideal form of feedback, if we can do it, and it's hard, is constructive feedback. And that is, you did a good thing. Here's how to do an even better thing next time. So these sound something like this. I really like the tone of your sentence. Consider shortening it next time. Or it was great that you reviewed my content, but it was too late in the process for me to incorporate any of the changes. So you can see the formula there. I communicated, you did a good job. You could do something even better. And there's a direct action they can take the next time they do this thing. This is really the most valuable type of feedback for our team. So once we have different types of feedbacks happening, this is where you can start to model what really healthy feedback looks like. It's not your manager's job to do it, it's yours. And you are really trying to create a safe environment for everyone to be open about, what they're thinking. So you want to have a balance of positive feedback, which is useful sometimes, and then a lot of constructive feedback. You need to give specific feedback that is timely, that's best for our brains if we get the feedback sort of as we're working on something or not too long after. And then, just when you see an exceptional sentence, like say so. If you see a chance for somebody to improve something, give them something actionable, something simple, something actionable that they can go with. And here is the hardest part of this. If you see negative feedback, if you hear it at your stand-up meeting, if you see a comment that is just straight up negative feedback, you need to give feedback on that feedback. You need to give constructive feedback saying, I appreciate that you shared your thoughts here, but you didn't help this person, and here's why. Here's what you could do better next time. That is so hard to do, but that is part of modeling good feedback, is to say, this is how you give feedback. Look at my example. Okay, so we're getting helpful feedback, which is great, but now we get to see, do our fellow colleagues actually care about documentation? Does everyone care about content the way we do? And this can be the part of the process where you may feel like, who cares about documentation? At this point, we're all collaborating, so maybe I could just be replaced anyway. Maybe our users don't really care about it that much. If you're feeling that way, let's talk about how to develop a shared motivation and passion across our team. So first of all, you need to solidify your value within the team, especially when now everybody's contributing and everybody's giving feedback. It can feel like, oh, I could easily be replaced. That's not true. You are a trained professional. You are a documentarian. You have skills that you bring your team that maybe nobody else has. You need to focus on those things. What is your unique value? Celebrate your personal accomplishments privately and among the team. Don't just move to the next thing. Remember, you did a cool thing. Share that. Share your ideas with your team, ideas about the product, ideas about documentation, and then keep track of when you actually deliver on those ideas. That can be really, really powerful. Seek out a mentor on your team who will give you feedback, who will help you track your progress so you can see yourself continuing to contribute to what the team is doing. And then come up with really special projects where you can be more creative, where you can shake up the normal work you're doing and also benefit the team. That's a great personal boost to you saying, yes, I am valuable. I do cool stuff. I'm a documentarian. So once you're feeling that solid, I'm valuable part, then you move on to sharing that value and those passions with the rest of your team. And that's about sharing or creating a shared value across everyone. To do this, it's recommended that just like how your company has shared values that I hope you all know and believe in, your team needs to have those as well. So a great way to do this is see if you can get 30 minutes from your teammates, your collaborators, and sit down and say, what do you think that we do that's valuable? What are our values as a team? Get everyone's thoughts, share your thoughts, and then you're a documentarian, like summarize those things, put them together in sort of a shared set of values and then give them to the group and see, do my collaborators share this? And because everybody has contributed, now you have a shared set of values that documentation is included in. So you have sort of a shared set of values among the team. Now it's time to increase awareness. And this is often where we fall down, where we communicate all sorts of things to our users, but we forget to communicate things to our team even. And remember, sometimes our team is just jumping in to provide a little bit of feedback, and then they're out of your documentation. They may never see the finished thing because it just it isn't meaningful for them. It's meaningful for users. So when something is done, a whole section is finally complete, or you've delivered something, show the team, show them the final results. Also, be honest about your process. What are you working on? What is hard? What is easy? Stand-up is a really good opportunity for this. Otherwise, it's completely invisible to them, especially if they're not writing content themselves. They're not even familiar with what it is you're actually doing. And then share your results. What's going well? What hasn't gone well? What have you learned? You never know what that's going to do for people in your team. That can be really helpful. And also share with other teams. You might share this with other tech writers on other teams, or just share, hey, this is how we were successful collaborating on my team. Maybe you should try collaborating this way on your team. And then, of course, have tools that make this kind of broadcast easy. We use the blog feature on Confluence, which is really easy to just share internal blogs about, like, we've been successful here. Maybe you have a weekly meeting, or maybe your team is successful with like an email newsletter. Just have a simple way to communicate your effectiveness. And that passion around documentation that used to just be yours will slowly permeate the rest of your team and the people you collaborate with. So, okay, let's say everybody cares about your content and you're creating it together. How do you share the process of creation? I mean, it's a very, very difficult thing to even be honest with yourself about, like how hard it is to make something, how much time it is that it takes to make something. And now you have to share that with a group of people that you're working together with. This can be the part of the collaboration experience where you feel like, oh, great, people can watch me work. That's not great. Like, not only can they see my words being typed on a page, but they can also see how long it takes me or how quickly I put it down. Don't worry. Here's how we can thrive in transparency. So we first have to be real about how writing ebbs and flows. Maybe I'm the only one who has tricked myself into thinking that everybody else on my team that I'm collaborating with, their work is linear. Right? They deliver the same quantity and quality at the same pace all day, in and out, right? They're just code generating machines. They're just project management machines, whatever it is. And that I'm the only one who can produce pages and pages of content really quickly and then struggle with a paragraph for like a day. Everybody's work is that way. And the sooner we realize code is written that way, project management happens that way, etc., the better, because then we can be open and honest with, hey, I'm working really fast right now. I'm working really slow right now. It's really hard. It's really easy. That is how creation works. And we have to be honest with each other about that. One of the things I really, really love to do is pair writing. Pair writing is just like pair review or pair coding, where two engineers sit down and write code together. With pair writing, you sit down and you write or review content with an individual, often your subject matter expert. And this can be really easy or really useful in two different situations in particular. If you're trying to be proactive, so you're starting a new project and you're like, hey, I just don't have the knowledge I need, or I don't know the details that I need to be able to document this. So sit down with your subject matter expert right away and just start writing. It might be a really rough draft, right? It's kind of like two people driving the same car or two people trying to paint a masterpiece together. It can be messy. Or be reactive. So if you write something and get it out for review and you're getting a lot of questions back, maybe that's a signal that you've missed a key thing. Sit down with that SME and look at it and rewrite it together. That can save a lot of time. Even though it feels like, oh, I'm wasting their time because both of us are doing this. In the end, you don't have such long feedback cycles, and it really is valuable for the team. When you do sit down, give them background on why am I sitting down with you? Why are we doing this? So that you have an end goal in mind. And then I think I've mentioned this a million times, have a tool with a collaborative editor. Confluence has one, Google Docs, Word Online, and Pages. Find one of those tools to write in so that even if you're apart from each other, you can see what the other is working on. And finally, remember, this is not a big brother scenario. I've worked in corporate cultures that are just poisonous. And the idea of being open and honest and transparent about my work, I mean, I'm going to lose my job if I tell someone, well, this thing was easier than I thought. They're going to say, you weren't doing enough. That is not what we're doing here. With collaboration, it's a hand-in-hand experience. We need to reach a point where everyone feels open and able to share what's going on with them. And that includes not just what you're working on, but your stress level, or maybe even do you feel comfortable sharing what's going on at home that's affecting your work? This is a time where we're especially feeling things like that. In his book, Culture Code, Daniel Coyle says, when you ask people inside highly successful groups to describe the relationship they have with each other, they all tend to choose the same word. The word is not friends or teammates or tribe members or any other plausible term. They use the word family. And what's more, they tend to describe the relationships with their teammates in the same way. Now, I know what you're thinking. That's not realistic. You can't fire your family members. And Mike Robbins, who wrote Bring Your Whole Self to Work, he agrees with that statement. But what he interprets that as really meaning is we need to be in a place with our collaborators where we can share if we feel comfortable with it. To the point where if something is happening at home that is affecting my productivity, or I am having a struggle with this collaborator I'm working with, I can just lay that out there, and I'm not going to get kicked for it. I'm going to experience empathy and get assistance from my team on it. That's a big shift, and that's really the core for successful collaboration. And I really believe once you've achieved that level of collaboration, there's nothing your team can't do. So yes, collaboration involves working with all sorts of people, getting much more feedback on your work than you're used to, sharing your passion for documentation with others, and being open about how hard it is to create stuff. Collaboration can be very scary, and it can be painful at times. I won't sugarcoat that. But also, with these new challenges with collaboration comes the power of the diversity of thought and the camaraderie of a unified team that you wouldn't get if you're still using a lonely and one-sided creation process. So the next time you're feeling the pain of composition, I suggest you seek out the passion of collaboration. So thank you so much for joining me for this talk. I would really love to hear your thoughts. So please connect with me on LinkedIn or Twitter. Also, there is going to be a Q&A session after this, so please jump over there and we'll talk about the questions you asked during this session or ask more questions. I'm really looking forward to seeing what additional thoughts and ideas people have. So join me over there, and thanks so much for your time. Happy collaborating.
All right, Matt, look, thank you so much for joining us for a bit of Q&A after your excellent presentation. It was awesome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, it was a great way to kick off day 2, I think. So, yeah, thanks again for staying up late over where you are. And without further ado, let's get into some questions, because we have had a fair few come in for your presentation.
All right.
So the first one's a question around remote working, which is a bit of an interesting one. So have you seen changes in your collaborations with how introverted or sort of people who may not be super comfortable with interacting, how they've been affected with remote work, and if you've seen a dynamic change with that?
That's a really good question. Yeah, I think Well, one of the things that is really interesting is, just remote work has gone from this thing that a few kind of, you know, oddball people or just not normal workers do to like, okay, this is the thing we all need to do and we all have to figure it out. And I've honestly seen a difference for both introverted, people who tend to be more introverted and people who tend to be more extroverted. For the people who are introverted, I feel like there's a new comfort level that I've seen because like as a loud, obnoxious American who is probably introverted than introverted, it's pretty easy for me to walk into a meeting room of 6 people and sort of just fall into that conversation. Because, there are those subtle rules of conversation where you kind of have to butt in a polite way. Whereas on a video call, you do need to be more reserved and you need to sort of wait your turn and you need to speak up when you can. And honestly, the mute button is a wonderful thing for both introverted and extroverted people. For those extroverted people, I think it's helped at least this extroverted person to just shut up and listen. To not have to feel like you have to fill every dead space, because a video call has dead space, and dead space is a really valuable time for thinking and to give that extra half a second that a more introverted person needs to speak up. So I think it's sort of helped level the playing field and sort of cut down on that heavy air pressure that loudmouths like myself bring into a meeting room. If people have had other experiences, please share them. I'm interested to know.
Yeah, I really would agree with you about the whole like giving that time to breathe and time to think in presentations, and not having to sort of just jump in and fill the void with noise. It's a really common problem where you have a room of people that have a lot of strongly opinionated voices in there. They just can't. The less, I guess, people that are comfortable getting their voices heard, they just never speak up. And you almost sometimes have to have a different session for them to actually hear what they have to say, which is not really that productive either, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's a really good response. Thanks for that one. So these couple of questions here, which I won't ask back to back, we'll put some space between them,
All right.
are actually feedback related, because I noticed that there was a fairly large trend in your presentation about the importance of feedback. So the first one is, have you got any resources you go to when you're helping people improve the way they provide constructive feedback in docs reviews?
So when it comes to doc reviews in general, well, first of all, I like to point people toward a good blog from an industry leading source, somebody who knows what they're talking about. One that I referenced a lot for this talk, and actually I think their blog post originally introduced me to like the actual types of feedback, is a company called Tiny Pulse. They make a really great kind of company-wide feedback tool. And so they kind of break it down really nicely, those differences. So, send somebody to a blog. And then when it comes to actually introducing the team members to it, I really, really like peer reviews. So whenever I would train somebody, bring them into, because at my last company as well, we also use Confluence. So I would sit somebody down in front of Confluence because they're fairly comfortable with that. But then I'm sort of showing them, here's our style guide, here are the macros we use, here's the way we structure things. And then, of course, there's the challenge of writing and how do we write things and what are all the nuances there. So it was a great opportunity to one-on-one, face-to-face, give that feedback. Like, I really like what you wrote there, but it really does need to be shorter, or whatever the case may be. So that's a really great opportunity to model that there, especially because you don't want to, the first thing you should never do is just send people to the comments, because or to give them feedback by comments first thing, because it'll be death by @mentions. I've given people like 50 comments on a page, and it's like, oh man, this is too much. They did a good job, but they're not going to feel like it when they see all these comments. So I really do like that approach. And I'm not the only team who's done that. There's some teams that meet every week, and they'll look at a different person's page, and just everybody will give feedback on it. I think it's a good practice, a hard one, but a good one.
Yeah, taking feedback on board really is a challenge, and it actually is a skill in itself, isn't it, to get it right? The other one that relates to this was actually, do you find that you incorporate all the feedback you get in collaborative sessions? And if you don't, how do you decide what feedback's valuable and what you might disagree with?
Oh, that's a good question. No, I don't. Um, for the longest time, I struggled with my writing ability because like I remember diagramming sentences in school, but I remember quickly like flushing that from my mind because I thought it was worthless. So when I ended up in a career where I do a lot of writing, like I feel nervous about that. Maybe I'm the only one who still doesn't feel like I know what I'm doing. But there's a really great quote from Ira Glass, who is the creator of This American Life, pretty popular podcast. I totally recommend it. But he talked about having good taste and how like when we do something long enough, we start to develop good taste. Maybe we don't have the skills to achieve that good taste yet, but we know what it is. We know what a good sentence is, or a good list or a good set of steps. So even in a live session, if I'm doing a peer review, if somebody says, hey, like I don't like this, they're gonna have to really fight to sort of change my mind. Not because like, I try to make sure it's not an ego thing, but out of humility, sort of looking at, okay, this is pretty good. How would you make this better? And that's great because it makes me a better writer. And it also at the same time makes them a better writer because, it's kind of like, I don't know if you've ever seen those weird cars where people can learn to drive and the driver instructor also has a steering wheel. That's kind of peer reviews. You're both there trying to drive that car. And maybe one of you gets better at avoiding barriers than the other, but I think that's a really good way, not out of pride, but out of a way to make you both better writers.
Very interesting insights there. I've got another one here that's from a first-time question asker, and I guess it sort of relates with stakeholders actually. And this one is about how do you deal with stakeholders like dev team managers who feel documentation is not their priority?
It breaks my heart every time I think of it, but there are those people out there who don't see the value in documentation. And honestly, there was a really good study published by STC, that's the like TechCom Association in the US, around just like how many teams don't see the value in technical communication, technical writers. It's pretty staggering. And a lot of that is because we're really bad at marketing our skill set. And yeah, I use the M word, which, before I did some work with a marketing team, I would have never, even referenced that. But we're part of a business organization, most of us. And even if you're part of a nonprofit, you need to justify your role. And for the most part, we all start at the bottommost rung of the organization. It goes like sales, marketing, everybody else, customer support, technical writing. That's typically how it is. So we need to be able to connect our work directly with the income of the company, saving money with the company, the primary goals of the company. And you might be cringing because you're like I'm a writer, I'm not a business person, but it's like we have to be able to justify our work. And so like for a development manager, talk to them about the amount of time their engineers lose when a support case is escalated because somebody read the documentation or couldn't find documentation and wants to know, what does something that they wrote 2 years ago do? How much time does that take that engineer to jump back into the code, go back through all the notes and figure out what is that functionality? Like that, those kind of things, that speaks to a dev manager. Support managers, same kind of thing. How much time did you spend on that support case? You can, follow the money as much as you can, follow the money and have those cases up your sleeve. They may never be passionate about writing, but they can certainly get behind saving their people time or getting more time for their people.
When it comes down to the money, that's a really good motivation, isn't it? Yeah. All about all about the cash.
Yeah.
Look, that is all we have time for as far as Q&A goes. Thanks for joining us, Matt.
Absolutely. See you, everybody.